What a time to be alive, Larry. We need the whole entire Biden family to be locked up now. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing fine. I'm doing better than Joe Biden. I mean, no one wishes cancer on anybody, but I hoped he lived for a long time so he could think about how he destroyed this country in prison. I think that would have been more appropriate.
Absolutely. I made the description for today's video. Larry Klayman hopes that Joe Biden survives cancer so he could serve out a prison term without us even discussing it. I know you well, my friend. So what are we going to discuss specifically today?
The fact that we have this lawsuit pending in Florida, it's very, very important. And I filed it a while back. I filed it as a Florida voter. I'm a Florida citizen. And it's over the 2020 elections where they lied. The White House doctor, this clown O'Connor, look at his picture. I mean, he's extremely weird looking, I got to say. And Jill Biden and Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, that this president was capable mentally and physically to be president of the United States. That's a fraud on the people of Florida and a fraud on the entire country. It disenfranchises my vote in Florida. So we filed this lawsuit, and it's been chugging along. Lo and behold, if you can believe this, the Trump Justice Department comes in to defend Joe Biden, Jill Biden, and the doctor, as well as Kamala Harris, all of whom are defendants for lying to the American people and defrauding us under the Westfall Act. And the Westfall Act only applies if a government official is acting in his governmental capacity. Now, it's not your governmental capacity in a political campaign to lie. So I hope that we get the attention of Pam Bondi. I hope that she yanks the representation of the Justice Department at taxpayer expense. But now we've got a double outrage. Not only did everybody say he was fit, including the White House doctor, but now we know that it's extremely likely, if not certain, that he had cancer back in 2020. And that should have been revealed to the people of Florida and to the American people. This is the biggest scandal in American history. We've got the auto pen on top of that. He obviously signed little to nothing. He couldn't remember what he did when he was interviewed by special counsel Robert Hur. Couldn't even remember his son's birthday or anything else. Couldn't remember when he was vice president. And this is the major fraud that's been committed on the American people. And I hope that our supporters will go to freedomwatchusa.org because this is going to be the only way that we get justice. And I changed the prayer for relief in this case to have the court bar Kamala Harris from ever running for office again in the state of Florida, not be on the ballot, having defrauded the people of Florida, along with Joe Biden, Jill Biden, and the doctor. And I got to tell you something, Jill Biden is perhaps the most evil of the bunch. I mean, for her own self-aggrandizement, so she could get, White House beauticians, the prestige, the free dress clothing that they get, to make them look whatever they want to look. This woman participated in a fraud against the American people. She is pure evil in a completely different way than Hillary Clinton. I'd say they're probably tied for the two most evil first ladies in American history.
It's fantastic, Larry, I have to say. Now, there's a lot of times I think when people go and visit freedomwatchusa.org, everybody knows it's important to donate and it's tax deductible and all that. But you have so many cases here, Larry. Which case is it exactly that we're talking about? Forgive me.
It's Klayman versus Biden. Klayman versus Biden in
And,
Florida.
uh-huh. And
Yeah.
so imagine a challenge that you're going to run into because whenever somebody brings something like this against a government figure, they like to say it's a generalized grievance and you need particularized damages. What do you plan or how does the case overcome
Well,
that?
there's so much in the public domain right now that no one can deny that there was a fraud. But the case is moving forward. We've asked for discovery in this case. We'll be proceeding with that, hopefully. And also, I trust that we have a judge that has some, cojones that allows it to go forward. That's a big if today. We've talked about the judges before. We're doing the best that we can. We have our citizens' grand juries. We've already indicted, tried, and convicted Joe Biden and Hunter Biden and his brother James for bribery from communist China, Ukraine, and Russia. Joe Biden for negligent homicide in Afghanistan. Now, we know obviously why he didn't take the recommendations, assuming that they're accurate, of the Joint Chiefs of Staff to not pull out the way he did in Afghanistan. He wasn't lucid. He wasn't there. And of course, we have the aftermath of all of this, the damage that's been created. And I suspect we'll have many more cases from individuals that were harmed by the acts of Joe Biden. These are not acts, governmental acts. These are political acts. And I might add, when President Trump was sued for defamation in a number of cases in the lead up to the 2024 elections by this woman who remembered 40 years after the fact, represented by a law firm, Hecker and Fink, in New York City. By the way, the same law firm that represents Tiger Woods, if you can believe that, in my PGA Tour lawsuit. Tiger certainly has chosen, a doozy of a law firm there. But the allegation was that the defamation was not within the context of his official duties. Same thing with many other cases that were brought against President Trump, some of which, resulted in jury verdicts and other kinds of decisions against him. Well, how is it in a political campaign, which is not a governmental function, it's a political campaign, that you can lie to the American people like this and claim any sort of immunity? So in principle, this case should go forward. It's a very important case. It hasn't gotten the attention that it should get. Fox News has ignored it. They ignore most things that are strong that take place in the legal sphere. I've tangled with Fox News in the past. I hope that someday, they'll cover what we do because, they basically have blacked out many of my clients, whether it's Sheriff Joe Arpaio, or whether it's Laura Loomer, or whether it's Jerome Corsi, who I prevented from getting indicted years ago. Roger Stone got indicted and convicted, but Jerry did not. But Fox News, I trust that somehow they'll start reporting the news. And this is a major case, as well as others. This is something that requires attention. It requires support from the American people. And I hope that people will go to freedomwatchusa.org and contribute to our cause with tax-deductible contributions. We need it. This is the kind of thing we do. We just don't get documents. We bring hard-hitting cases in citizens' grand juries and citizens' trials.
Yeah. And Larry, I think between the two of us, we have done more, certainly than anything Tom Fitton has done. I don't know if you had an opportunity. I know you were quite busy today, but I was as well. I'm still dealing with this dental surgery. It's kind of making me feel terrible. I didn't realize how serious a tooth abscess could be. But I have been tangling with Jeb Boasberg, the Chief Justice there, the judge in the D.C. District Court. I basically forced him to docket my amicus curiae brief, and now he's doing all kinds of unconstitutional stuff. This guy's had 3 59E motions filed against him, and he suddenly decided that I need leave to file one of these. So I think what he's doing, Larry, maybe rises to the level of obstruction of justice, and I've attempted to contact Jeanine Pirro, who is now the interim U.S. Attorney in Washington, D.C., and certainly if she agrees with me, is there any reason why a judge could not be criminally charged with obstruction of justice if the facts prove that's what they did?
Oh, certainly. So what happened was, Jason, you told me that your pleading was accepted by the clerk and docketed. So today there was an order that came out that said you need leave to file it?
No. What happened was he granted me... I'm entered in the case as an amicus curiae now, and my amicus brief was docketed here at ECF number 29. We can see that, and people can read that in the public. But I had entered previously this constitutional mandate saying that he has violated Article 3's good behavior clause, and he decided that needed leave to file. So I submitted a 59E motion saying, no, you've made an error of law. This is not me asking you to do something. This is me instructing you that this is what the Constitution says, and you have to adhere to it. You have no judicial discretion. And he said, well, we're going to decide if you can have leave. And then he denied me leave to file that. So I'm just hammering his docket now. And people should get into it here on X. They can follow me on X at JG_CSTT, and the full docket is up there. It's gotten quite confusing, Larry, but the judge is behaving in a manner that is totally unconstitutional, denying me my rights to petition the government, and it's certainly incompatible with the good behavior clause. We're going to test it.
Yes, it certainly seems that way. Let me see if I get this right, because you told me and you were related that this had been filed by the clerk. So after it was filed by the clerk, Boasberg tells you need leave, and then he denied it.
No. It took 10 days for me to get them to acknowledge that this amicus brief was even there. And then he finally did put it on. So he said, okay, we're going to let you come in as an amicus brief, but we're going to deny this constitutional motion, which is basically telling Boasberg that he's got to forfeit his judicial authority because he's not behaving according to good behavior. So he said, no, I'm denying that. So I entered a 59E again, saying, you don't have discretion to grant or deny this constitutional motion. You're not determining if you did or didn't. It's just a fact. You've been denying my constitutional rights. It's not a discretionary motion. It's a constitutional mandate. And he's just behaving so crazily. It basically proves what I'm saying. He's basically proving my initial point that he's not.
Has he ruled on your latest 59E motion?
No, it hasn't even hit the docket yet. So the clerks gave me the pro se email address now, so I don't have to wait a week for the post office, which is quite beneficial. But if I put it in on the email, they still take a day or two to enter it. And so he's playing some games with that. The other thing that he's doing, Larry, is he's using these minute orders, so it doesn't exactly have a number on the docket. And you can see here, he's shifting around his minute orders to kind of make it seem like things are happening out of context and time. When we get over to our sponsor exclusive segment next, if you're interested, I can share these motions with you because they're not public yet, so I don't want to do them.
Well, let me give you some quick thoughts here. Number one, he doesn't set forth the reasons why he's denying your
Correct.
motion. They're just minute orders. So that's a dodge. And this is what these judges do, particularly federal court judges. They don't feel like they have any duty to tell you how they're ruling. I deal all over there. I can't tell you one. The only one I have any degree of respect for is Royce Lamberth, okay? And I've disagreed with him respectfully on a number of matters, including January 6th. I mean, Royce is a good friend over many years. He made many good rulings on my behalf at Judicial Watch. He has gone native in many ways. I feel bad for him. He's not in good health. But the rest of them over there it's excuse the French, it's a shit show. And I can't think of one of them that has any real degree of integrity in the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia. Some are worse than others. Burl Howe, James Boasberg, Tanya Chutkin. I mean, I can just name them off like that. It's unreal. It's like the witches of Macbeth stirring their cauldron.
It is.
It is. I mean, it's terrible. And, they feel put upon. I'm sure they go to their lunchroom and complain. Half the country hates us. We're in grave danger. And before this, it was to get into the district court in D.C. was harder than to get into the CIA, okay, in terms of security. Wow. That's how much they love themselves. But in today's world, they actually have a point, and I don't wish them any harm, and I hope nobody does harm them. But same thing as with Biden. I hope they just spend some time in the clink. And think about it. Because, yes, they are committing crimes. They're violating their oath of office. They should be removed. And you've got the head of the House Judiciary Committee for 8 years, Jim Jordan. And I've said this many times. All he does is go on Fox News, rolled up sleeves, no jacket, Ohio State wrestling coach. He himself was involved in the scandal there. Maybe that's why he's timid over alleged sexual abuse of wrestling guys. Not him, but people that he apparently didn't take any action to enforce what was going on. I don't know if it's true or not. But the fact is, the guy's done nothing in 8 years to call one judge, one federal judge, up to his committee. Why he's head of the Judiciary Committee, is confounding anyway. He's not a lawyer, okay? Not that you need to be. but he's
But
done
they
nothing.
never do anything with the judicial branch. It's really upsetting. So, Larry, I'm attempting to short circuit that, and I've introduced the Superman doctrine of law, in which I've literally said in this motion, just like kryptonite, Boasberg cannot resist the effects of constitutional failure, and he just has to leave the case.
You got to ask him, how much will it take to make a decision in my favor? You know,
Well, Larry, we got a little
regrettably,
bit of a.
regrettably, it happens more often than not. Why is it? Ask yourself this question: that we never find out whether judges have been bribed or not. I'm not saying that Boasberg was, but it happens. This happens in the real world. The FBI lays off them because they want them for convictions. They're buddy buddies with these judges. No one holds them accountable, but we're going to hold them accountable because, as you know, Jason, and you're going to be on the advisory committee, the board with other prominent people. You're an excellent investigator, and you have some really good ideas on how to reform the legal system. The Department of Judicial and Legal Accountability, a complement to DOJ. And we're going to make some waves. And we're not just going to recommend changes that should be legislated, in Congress. And whether Congress passes it or not, the American people will see what we're proposing, which is more than reasonable and in good faith. And they'll see just what a bunch of horrors, with some exceptions, on Capitol Hill we're dealing with both Democrats and Republicans. The irony is that the three women representatives, Nancy Mace, you've got Congressman Luna from Miami, and Marjorie Taylor Greene. They're the ones that have the guts up there. The men just run away. They don't want to do anything that's strong. And this is what we're dealing with. It's a situation where this legal system has become so endemically corrupt. And the legal profession, I can tell you this honestly, as a lawyer, I'm the anti-lawyer, is the most corrupt profession in the United States and frankly worldwide. I've said this before, when a doctor makes a mistake, you find the syringe in your stomach. Okay, when a lawyer makes a mistake, it's covered up. You never know.
Yeah, yeah.
And then yesterday, talk about the legal profession. Kash Patel comes out and says Epstein committed suicide. I mean, they got to this guy. They got to him. And the guy looked so nervous when he said that.
Yeah, he did.
They thought they were going to off him. And I had a favorable impression of him up to that point. There's no way that Epstein committed suicide. Even a moron with IQ of 50 knows that didn't happen.
Exactly. Just to put a little color on what you were saying, I certainly have no evidence that Boasberg has been bribed. But what I've been discovering, here's a mutual friend of ours presiding over the Muppet wedding of Letitia James. I don't know that it's as simple as bribery, and I'm not talking about Boasberg, but when it comes to her, for example, there seems to be a network of individuals who are involved in what essentially is beginning to look like the precursor to the subprime mortgage scandal. I've been investigating a mortgage that Letitia James and her father got in 1983, and this judge here, this is Cassandra A. Johnson. She is the first woman of color to preside over the surrogate court in New York and Queens. And oddly, her name appears on a case from 1982, even though she was not even born or perhaps a one-year-old baby. This judge is 43, and her name appears on a 43-year-old case that's directly linked. It's the application for administration in the probate case of the woman who owned the apartment that it appears, based on public domain evidence, that Letitia James and her father stole. And there's also a lot of evidence that Letitia James faked her father's death. That's why he's a Muppet. Joel tells me I have a tinfoil hat, but then again, he doesn't know about any of this evidence, apparently. And this guy, who's also a district court judge in the Southern District of Ohio, this is Thomas M. Rose, who coincidentally has the same last name as the decedent, which makes for a very clean-looking file, but I do not think that this person is related to the woman, and oddly, his name is absent from the probate case as the administrator. So there's a lot of details here, Larry, and again, I don't think it's as simple as somebody handing a judge $5,000, but I think people like Adam Schiff and this person are getting read into a network of complex theft.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting that happened. There are many forms of bribery, and I use that term figuratively. These judges, these federal judges, get on the bench by and large through large political campaign contributions. They have to pay it back. And you can almost imagine how they're going to rule. I know 90% of the time how a judge is going to rule based upon who appointed him to the bench in one of these politically tinged cases. And that is not the rule of law. And we've said this before, Jason. I think before long, we're going to have to go to artificial intelligence, get rid of judges, okay? And I think we'll have robots on the bench making decisions. It certainly would be more just than what we have today.
Rule-based, it would be. Honestly, it would be a great idea, Larry, at least at the lower level, to have that, to filter through cases, to prevent corruption at the outset of a case. I think it's not a crazy proposal at all. Now, here's the thing, Larry. We got a little bit of a late start today, so I think we're going to break now and head over to our sponsor-exclusive segment. People are going to be able to join us on your Substack page, of course, and I also want to encourage people to visit freedomwatchusa.org, make a contribution, keep Larry going with all of his cases. We got a lot of complicated stuff to do, but we'll be back in just a few minutes. People are going to be able to join us on Substack and Subscribestar and all of that. Stay with us, everybody. We'll be right back.